I'm Mona Peterson, Director of the ACE Ministry, the Adult Christian Education and Small Group Ministry here at First Presbyterian Church of Fort Lauderdale. I'd like to share with you today my reflection on just one scripture text from the selections of the Revised Common Lectionary for today, Tuesday, September 8th, as part of our devotional series called This One Thing. But before we begin, I want to ask a question. Don't you just love freshly baked bread? The heavenly aromas that arise from kitchens such as Croissant Time, Panera, or Pane Dolce, the little Italian bakery right up the street off Las Olas. Can you imagine biting into a piece of this bread with the golden flaky crust on the outside, only to be met with an even more delicious, pillowy, melt-in-your-mouth center on the inside? Bread is a comfort food and a staple food across many cultures. And it's something that we can make ourselves with success if we have the right ingredients and we follow the recipe. And there is a comfort in knowing that. But what would happen if we didn't have all the ingredients? Perhaps the bread would turn out less tasty, less satisfying, dry, flat. Now, what if something catastrophic happened and this was the only food left in the world to eat? This subpar iteration of the fluffy white stuff that we had come to know was now all we could offer our family for days. We might find a new appreciation in this sustenance and thank the Lord for it. We'll circle back around to this in just a minute. Allow me to set the stage for you, the events leading up to the scripture text that we will focus on today. We are in the 12th chapter of Exodus. Moses has just returned from Egypt, unable to convince the Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery. In fact, Pharaoh even boasted that he didn't even know who God was. The Egyptians shall know that I am Lord, was God's reply, along with a series of plagues and disasters that were inflicted on Egyptians in order to force Pharaoh to release the Israelites from bondage. This stuff, frankly, folks, was pretty gross and icky. Things like water turning to blood, frogs dropping from the sky, blanketing the ground with a layer of amphibian slime, swarms of locusts descending upon the Egyptians like swarms of locusts. And the final act of destruction from God was him sending the angel of death to kill all the firstborn sons of the Egyptians, including the Pharaoh. Through all of this happening, not one Israelite nor any of their livestock were harmed. In fact, God told Moses to order the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb and smear that blood on the door of their houses. That way the angel would know to pass over these houses of the Israelites. It was this final sign from God that Pharaoh finally relented. Now the newly freed Israelites had to leave in such a hurry that they didn't even have time enough for their breads to rise. Let's turn to scripture and read from Exodus chapter 12, verse 39 and verse 42. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt. It was not leavened because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. That was for the Lord a night of vigil, to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is a vigil to be kept for the Lord by all the Israelites throughout their generations. Taking from the NRSV version of the Holy Bible. So the dough that was baked, that wasn't able to rise, was now the sustenance by which these Israelites could survive. Today, unleavened bread is eaten as a reminder of how God delivered his people from slavery. The one thing that might have turned up the noses of some folks back then and been cast aside for something better to come along was now what was needed to merely survive. I've been in a position of having to decide what to take with me and what to leave behind in order to move quickly from one place into a new reality, much like when the shelter-at-home order was imposed at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic back in March. I grabbed important documents and folders and files and an old laptop computer from my office. Now, the relationship between this laptop and me is, well, complicated. It's outdated, it doesn't have a lot of memory, and it used to crash at the uncanny, inopportune moments of whatever I was working on. No longer did I have in front of me the crusty on the outside, fluffy on the inside standard to which I was accustomed. Now what I had in front of me was something flat. But there it was. There it sat on the desk in my guest room turned home office space, staring at me with a blank screen as if to say, "It's me or nothing, girl, so let's get to it." This forced me to find new ways to speed and fortify it with software that would allow me to continue my work successfully. I had to ask for help to do this, and I had to have patience. Just the two things with which I struggle. Funny how God never misses a chance to provide opportunities for us to work on that which we lack. After several weeks, I was cruising along feeling blessed with the ability to do the work set out for me. And it didn't look the same, it didn't feel the same, it didn't even sound the same, but it got the job done. The month of May came around and I was able to acquire the desktop computer from my office and to bring it home and set it up. And while I work predominantly from that computer, I still think back of the state of panic thought of only having that old laptop to work with a new sense of thankfulness. It offers mobility and a sense of freedom that you don't get with a desktop computer. And it will always be a reminder that we don't always get to choose our circumstances, but despite that, God always provides. Thinking about the lessons this pandemic has taught us about necessity, dependence, comfort, familiarity, we have to ask ourselves, what have we learned? For me, the one thing is that my unleavened bread in this pandemic was my old laptop computer. And whenever I use it, I'm reminded of all the ways in which the Lord continues to take care of us. So I ask you, what was your unleavened bread during the quarantine experience? I would love to hear from you about how God showed up in your life. Until tomorrow, be in good health, with joy in your heart, and love for all.